Today's guest is holistic personal trainer and nutrition and lifestyle coach, Allison Pelot.
Hi, everybody. You know, people from around the world are constantly asking me where they can find organic foods and supplements that are actually organic, not just some fake impersonation, which is sadly so common in the marketplace today. My most common suggestion is go to Organifi.com, that's Organifi.com, where you can find a wide range of excellent nutritious products made from certified organic source materials. Organifi has superfood drinks that actually taste great, unlike most, immune support products, excellent high-quality protein powders, digestive support, joint support, liver support, green juice, hormonal support, and menstrual ease nutrition formulated by a team of female herbologists for women, and more. My family and I and a significant number of my clients and friends and students from around the world use and love Organifi products because they're nutritious, taste great, and unlike many products, you actually get what you pay for. Hallelujah! I love Organifi's high values and high quality products, and they're excellent for athletes, children, and the whole family. There's no better investment than investing in your own health and well-being. And when it comes to investing in my health and the health of my family, I go to Organifi. If that's not enough to make you want to explore all the amazing products waiting for you at Organifi, I'd love to sweeten the deal for you by offering you a special Living 4D with Paul Chek discount of 20% on any of Organifi's excellent certified organic, super clean, nutritious products by using the code capital C, capital H, capital E, capital K 20 on checkout. That's Check 20, all caps, on checkout. I hope you enjoy Organifi as much as my family and I do. Hi, everybody. I know that you're all aware of the importance of vitamin C. There is a mountain of research on it, but not all C is created equally. I love Paleo Valley's Essential C Complex because it is the real deal, bioavailable, and I wanted you to hear right from Autumn Smith, founder of Paleo Valley, why their Essential C Complex is so unique and something you definitely want for your family and your children. Autumn, tell us about your Essential C Complex.
Well, I was shocked to learn as a holistic nutritionist that over 90% of the vitamin C on the market is derived from genetically modified corn, and then it's processed with highly volatile acids. And so I knew I had to find a better way to get all of the powerful benefits of vitamin C. So what I did was I dove into the research and I found the 3 most vitamin C rich superfoods on the planet. That's unripe acerola cherry and camu camu and amla berry. And then I just packed them into capsules. And the benefits are amazing because you're not only getting vitamin C, but all of the other wonderful benefits that come from these amazing superfoods. So to get access to this complex, all you have to do is go to paleovalley.com and you can use the code CHEK15 at checkout. That's lowercase CHEK 15, and you can save 15% off.
Hi, everybody. You know, I love Bioptimizer's products, and one of the products that I use every single day is Leaky Gut Guardian, which is designed to repair leaky gut syndrome, which almost everybody has today, and it's the basis of what we now call metabolic syndrome. And what most people don't realize is if you can't digest the food that you're eating and your small intestine is leaking, then undigested food particles get into your bloodstream. They go right through the portal vein to the liver, and the liver has no mechanism for breaking large food molecules down, so your immune system comes after it and attacks it. I brought Wade Lightheart here, co-founder of Bioptimizers, because I really wanted to know, how does Leaky Gut Guardian actually work to close the gut up and seal it? Wade, how does it do it?
There's 3 areas that it deals with. Number 1, it provides immunoglobulins made from eggs, the probiotic strains that are shown to repair the mucoid lining, as well as the prebiotics that allow them to take hold and operate inside your digestive canal. We combined all those 3 in a very tasty formula so that you can take it every day on an empty stomach, and it's been proven to work.
Wade, I love that. I know it works because I use it, and everybody I've ever given it to is amazed by it. What's the discount for Living 4D listeners, and where can they get it?
Well, if they go to www.leakygutguardian.com/living4D and put in Living 4D, at any point, they will receive a 10% discount on all their products with our 100% money-back guarantee.
Welcome, everybody, to Integrate Yourself and with Allison Pelot.
This is Allison. I've just had a sex change. How do I sound?
Oh, you sound great.
Really?
Yeah.
How do my boobies
sound
look?
a little like your voice is a little lower, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How about my Cleavage
Well,
is
you
it
don't
up there?
you don't have much.
No, I'm still
You've
learning.
lost a lot of that.
I'm
Yeah.
learning.
Okay.
Takes a while.
But you were telling me that you came into this life as a man, but the other lives you were a woman. So maybe that makes sense.
I did have a few past lives as a woman, which
Right.
really shocked me when I was doing it's my second professional past life regression, but this one revealed a lot more than the first one. And it was, I'm a guy that loves to be a man, because when I, having 2 wives and lots of experience with women, I just look at how much work women do.
Yeah.
And it's just
It's a lot.
daunting.
Yeah.
And actually research shows that the average woman does 4 to 5 times as much work a day as the average man. And this is proper scientific research that I looked into years ago.
I believe it.
As
Yeah.
part of my research in ergonomics. But anyhow, that was the end of my joke.
Okay. So, okay, I'm here with Paul Chek, and we're doing a Swapcast today. We're just, we're going to be talking about our books, but he has a book coming out. I have a book coming out. And we wanted to begin this conversation by talking about creative processes, creative expressions. And I know that, Paul is actually, when I first I think it was the HLC level 3 that I was in class with you. And I remember sitting in there, we were doing an art exercise, and you just asked us to draw whatever came to mind. And at that point in my life, I would definitely hadn't tapped into my creative expression like I have now. I just didn't even know where to start. It was I was blank because, at that point I had, which I go into my whole process in my book is kind of how I got here today, is I was kind of like a recovering perfectionist and hadn't really stepped into my own unique expression at that point, or had lost it along the way, because we really, as children, we know what our creative expression is. We know we're very tapped into that. But I sat there and looked down at that paper, and I just didn't know what to draw. And it was very stifling. I was like, I was almost like, I can't believe I can't do this, So I think that was the first moment that that I realized, wow, like I need to change some things in my life because I'm not having fun, right?
That's a very normal experience when I teach art in my training programs. I've had classes where grown men and women sat and cried for 4 hours and could not touch their pen, pencil, or brush to the paper or canvas. They were so afraid.
Yeah, I believe it.
Full of self-judgment, fear, inhibition, and it's one of the reasons I do art workshops and why I studied art therapy for years and use it in my practice. But you can tell a lot about a person by what they can or cannot express artistically, and how they express it, and how they react to their expressions, and what they express. And I've done entire blocks of training. I do my block, the way I coach people is a 20-hour block of training, because I found if a person won't commit to 20 hours, I tell them, if you won't commit to a year, then I'm the wrong guy. So don't even start with me.
Right.
But I learned if you can't get someone to commit to 20 hours of training, you cannot get to the beliefs and the behaviors that led to the choices that got them in trouble in the first place.
Yeah.
So some people are so blocked up. I find this most with any heart disease patient.
Yeah.
And one guy was so kind of just locked up inside and had a real hard time filling out my assessment paperwork. And so I said to him, I'll tell you what, let's take a different approach. I'm going to do something that might be a bit of a scary thing for you, but I think you're going to be quite surprised at what happens. So I had him do a mandala titled My Heart.
Wow.
And he took probably about 2 weeks to do it, but his whole family was in coaching with me, and they'd already had the experience of how art works and how I use it, and it was already blowing their minds. So they were saying, Dad, keep going, keep going. And what he gave me looked like a bunch of geometrical forms.
Wow.
And he's a very, very successful man, this guy. So I did an analysis on the art. And the way I do it is I don't just use standard art therapy protocol, which there's a lot of, but I connect to each person's soul. And then I ask the soul to guide me as to what each thing I'm seeing means and what questions I should ask their body mind to help them through the challenge that they're going through. So the long story made short is after we finished the 20-hour coaching block and went through the mandala and then the exercises and the questions and the therapy it suggested. So I said to him, well, you were a bit curious as to how in the world I could help you with art. I said, how accurate was my assessment? And he looked at me and shook his head. He goes, 100%. I have no idea how you did that. But the point is that his art told me about the relationship between him and each of his children, the relationship between his children, the relationship between him and his ex-wife, his current wife. Everything that was going on that was challenging him came out of that one piece of art and brought it right up on the table to be addressed. And that was his first piece of art in his life.
That's incredible.
Yeah. And so the point that I'm making with all this is that the reason art, especially in therapy, is so powerful is because the ego has no defense against it.
Right.
See, if you don't do anything like you did, I already know you have a serious ego problem. And I don't mean like
no, I know what you mean.
Big ego.
Yeah.
It means someone whose sense of love and trust in themselves is damaged.
Yes.
Therefore, anything that they produce is the progeny of that state of mind. And one who locks up is afraid of usually judgment of what they're going to produce. And so they are so afraid of other people's opinions about them or their art that they won't do it because it feels safer to them to just stay blank.
Exactly.
But they don't realize that tells me as a therapist that their whole life is in freeze frame.
Yes.
It's like the movie is paused. And so they're living without living. And that leads to a crisis every time.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's a little confusing when it hits you. At first you're thinking, because I remember thinking, well, I feel like I thought I was doing it all right. I thought I was doing what I was supposed to do.
That's the problem.
I know.
What I was supposed to do, which is somebody else is supposed to, isn't it, Allison?
Exactly. Yeah. So I went through that whole process, and it took, of course, many years, at least 10 years or more.
That's not bad. I know people that have been going at it for 20 years and they're still struggling along. Not that I'm coaching, but people that I know, in my social circles.
Well, yeah. I mean, it is an unwinding, right? It's an unwinding, and some people never do, get to that point, but it's an unwinding of, for me, it was a lot of the inner child work that I did was really helpful. And really connecting with that child that loved to do art and loved to express herself and loved to be, didn't really care who was watching, and so, so I took that and I pretty much ran with it. And I decided, what I was doing before wasn't working. So let me try something different and see what happens. So that's what I did. And yeah, it's been really a beautiful thing ever since I started thinking of it that way. And I started my creative process just recently. After my dad passed away, it was exactly a year ago, right before COVID hit. and then my business restructured, all these things happened. It was such a gift to be able to then say to myself, well, now this is a really great opportunity to do whatever I want to do. The things that I've never done, I always said I wanted to do, but didn't think I could do. So I just began writing every morning that I woke up. I just wrote whatever was in my head. And that started out 15 minutes. It turned into 30 minutes every morning, and then an hour or more. And then I found myself with a book.
Yes. Good. So that is your new book.
That's my new book. Yeah.
And so is that what you've just described as the creative process?
Yeah. Well, and even before that, I had to learn how to dance, so to speak, as if no one was watching. Right. So I just had to get to the point where, and actually I did some acting classes and improv classes, which helped a lot.
Yes.
And it just put me, it was actually the thing I needed. Improv was one thing that it was perfect for me because it didn't have structure. It didn't have a plan. There was a light structure around improv, but
stay in the room.
Yeah. But really any mistakes are welcomed in improv because that's how improv works. And
well, if a mistake's not welcome, it's not improv.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
It's something else.
Yeah. So it was a great awakening for my creative self to go through that, and really fun too, but uncomfortable at times. But that's, I think, pretty normal. Yeah. But so anyway, acting led me to begin to, and of course the podcasting too. But just all of that, obviously, you probably didn't experience this as much, but when I started podcasting, I almost cringed to hear my own voice at times. I was like, it almost felt like like nails on a chalkboard. Because I was like, oh gosh, what am I, I don't know. I just was so judgmental about how it sounded. And
just change your voice.
Yeah. Well, my voice was fine. It was just I hadn't heard it before.
I know. I was teasing.
No, but this was saying, like, we have so much judgment in being seen and being heard because we haven't developed that intimacy with ourselves to be in that place, right? And so in order to do that, you have to know yourself, understand yourself, learn how to love yourself.
Yes. Yeah.
And yeah, that's the journey I went on.
I'm fortunate, when I was a little boy, I asked my mother to not call me Paul, to call me Lion. I said, I am a lion. And I really believed when I was like 6 that I was a lion. And it was very hard for anyone to convince me otherwise. But living in a very violent home where my stepfather could be super scary and break bones and put people in the hospital and neat tricks like that, I never, ever was afraid to face him and fight. Me and my brother would attack him if he was beating my mother around, and something inside of me and my brother was more afraid of running than fighting. And because I've pioneered so much stuff, I've been through so much criticism and nasty stuff, and people, hey, you're crazy, you don't know what you're talking about, blah blah blah. That little boy was always there.
Yeah.
And always saying, no, it's you that doesn't know what you're talking about.
Exactly.
You might want to pay attention.
I know that.
There's a reason you're in this class right now.
Yeah.
You ever thought about that? But my only point is that a lot of people have that kind of experience that you're talking about. But, for me, and also my grandfather and my grandmother are both teachers. My grandmother was the superintendent of the Redondo Beach School District for 35 years. My grandfather taught special needs children and was a very, very skilled man at many things. So I think teaching is just sort of a natural extension of my genetics, really.
Yeah.
And apparently there's more teachers in my family tree as well. So from my earliest age, I just found myself, for some reason, even though I wouldn't get nearly the highest grades on tests, I always knew how to do things.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of that just comes from being raised on a farm where you have to be highly practical, and theories don't matter if they don't make animals healthy and crops grow and get jobs done. And
Yeah. Learn by experience. That's the best way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Not to mention you had so many past lives, like we talked about earlier. You bring everything in from your past life into that lifetime, right? So it's so much.
We're an aggregation of all of our past lives at any given moment. Everything's with us. Most of it's unconscious.
Yeah.
Metaphysically, the great masters say that you won't begin to remember your past lives until you're evolved enough spiritually that they can actually help you help other people.
Yeah.
Because past life information can be very disabling to people.
Yes. I can see how that can happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's really interesting. But it can also be something that helps people understand themselves better in this lifetime as well.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I did my first past life regression probably around 97, only because I'd had so many experiences where I myself would be surprised that I knew how to do something that I was never taught to do.
Yeah.
And many people would say to me, "How did you know how to do that?" And I said, "I don't know. I just know."
Mm-hmm. Right.
We like strange things with people's bodies or any number of things. And I would just empty myself and hold the question in my mind, and all of a sudden I just knew what to do. And so through my studies of metaphysics and being raised in my mother became a yogi when I was 12, and I worked with monks. So I got a lot of great basic training from monks on meditation and things that were very supportive, but I just knew that past lives were a real probability, because in Self-Realization Fellowship, that's part of the training and the teachings. And so it also didn't make sense to me that the universe would invest what it has to invest to create any human being.
Yeah.
And then just go screen to black after it could be 1 year.
Yeah.
I mean, to 100, which in the span of the universe is shorter than the span of a flash bulb on a camera, right? So why would the universe invest? And just for the listeners, I've actually seen research on how much energy it takes to make and maintain a human body. And it's been done by scientists.
Yeah.
And the total number of, I believe it was joules or one of these kind of metric measurements, turns out to be more energy than our sun produces.
Whoa.
In each human body.
That's incredible.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
And the statistics that are now out, I think it's the book. I'm brain farting on the book, but there's a book I have that I recently got, Sawyer G's book. I think it's called Regenerate.
Mm-hmm.
And they actually calculate how much electrical power is produced by the mitochondria.
Right.
And the total amount of energy in the human body is shockingly high.
Yeah, we produce a lot of energy.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I know, right?
I mean, if you could tap the energy in one human body, you could probably light a city like San Diego.
Don't give anybody any ideas.
Well, it's already happening. They're already working on strategies for that.
Yeah, I bet.
There's a company that's trying to use human blood to harvest the energy.
Are you serious?
Yeah,
really? That's happening?
Yeah,
oh my God.
Yeah. They're looking at ways to actually power up the technologies that they want to interface with the human body, computer technologies, by accessing the energy in the blood.
That sounds like the Matrix.
It is everything.
It's like that's coming. Like
all the sci-fi is. I mean, think of Star Wars. Think of all the things as a kid you saw, and it's all happening. It's
wild. Happened. Yeah.
Right.
Well, it has exactly happening all at once, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's it blows my mind. And I know intuitively, I know that I've been here a lot. And I've also worked with Roseanne,
Yeah.
who just visited you as well. And she's told me that I think I've been here just more times than like millions and millions of times. So
That's a lot. Yogananda
Yeah.
says the average human being will reincarnate about 8 million times through the mineral, plant, and animal kingdom before they get their first human body.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So when I'm asking for how many lifetimes I've lived, I ask in a human form, just so I'm clear about that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Otherwise, you can get this really massive number.
Okay. Maybe I should ask that question. Then
Probably
next
a
time.
good idea.
Yeah.
I was shocked myself at the number of lifetimes that I've lived,
Yeah.
just because it was a lot higher than I expected it to be. Now, many people think, how can you trust stuff like that? Well, let me tell you, when you're doing a past life regression with a skilled regressionist,
Mm-hmm.
the experiences that you have are so real and so vivid. It's a toss-up between what's more real, that experience, and the one you wake up and come into after the regression,
Yeah.
which is very much like plant medicines.
Yeah. I've heard and experienced similar things with Roseanne, and I've heard other people who are quantum healing, who use the quantum healing technique, that, sometimes there is that mesh of realities where they can't really tell which is really real,
Mhm.
which reality is really real. So yeah, that's super interesting to me, because it really, I think if anything, we saw more of that this past year, where you've got that veil that's really fading away, and we're able to step into these other dimensions of reality within ourselves, right?
Mhm.
But we didn't even know or be able to, we're not able to access before at all.
Mm.
But
Well-
except for on, some people could, but not for the most part, as many people as are now, probably, right?
Yeah, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that the magnetic field on the Earth is getting a lot weaker.
Yes.
And it's going to progressively weaken until it comes to a stop, and then it'll flip.
Is that the
poles.
pole shift?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so a number of scientists have spoken about how that affects our psychology. But
Yeah.
it makes it much easier to travel out of the Earth plane psychically. So things like remote viewing, astral travel, past life regressions, those things are all a lot easier to do as the magnetic field is weakening.
Yeah, that makes sense to me, because I've noticed more people talking about those things in this recent year, and it does seem more accessible in some ways, like to
Mhm.
be able to do this. I know that I told you I've been dreaming, like I feel like it's been the whole 2020 year and into now, that I've had these real vivid lucid dreams, like almost every night. I'm going into these different realities.
Mhm.
And yeah, it's been really incredible, because sometimes it does feel very real. My dreams feel more real sometimes than
Mhm.
real life.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hopefully you're writing those dreams down.
I am. Yeah.
Yeah, that's important.
Yeah.
There's all sorts of juice in there.
Oh yeah.
I do a
Yeah.
lot of dream analysis in my therapy, and it blows people's minds when they actually get to the end of the analysis and realize what's actually being said in the dream.
Yeah, because it is their subconscious, and also communicating with you, and
Mhm.
right. Yeah.
Have you ever heard of the book Dreaming on Both Sides of the Brain by Doris E. Cohen?
No, I haven't
I
heard
think
of
you'd
that.
love it.
Okay.
I think it's on audio too,
Okay.
on Audible.
I'll definitely
It's a
listen
very
to that.
good book.
Okay. Yeah.
In fact, I want to get her on my podcast. I keep forgetting to track her down.
Yeah.
But it's a very good book for anyone that wants to learn more about how to assess their dreams and find out what the messages are. And it's not a fluffy book.
Yeah.
Like a lot of dream analysis books are all based on kind of like astrology, where if you're reading the newspaper, you're going to have a shitty day or a good day.
Yeah.
You can't do that in dream analysis, because, for example, if there's a dog in your dream
Mm-hmm.
and there's a dog in my dream, the dog can mean something completely different in your dream than it does in my dream.
Yeah.
But dream analysis books say, well, if you see a dog in your
That's
dream,
right.
it means this. If
Yeah.
you see a dragon, it means this.
Yeah.
And
That's what I don't like about those
Yeah,
books.
you can't use that. That's as far from an authentic dream analysis as you can get.
Yeah. So she has a different approach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Her approach is very aligned with the Jungian approach, and that's what I spent years studying, and others as well. But what her main premise is that nothing that's occurring in a dream relates to anything other than yourself, with the exception of prophetic dreams.
Mm-hmm.
For
How do you tell
example-
the difference on that?
Well, a prophetic dream's almost always about avoiding some kind of disaster or somebody going to die.
Okay.
So, for example, I saw a documentary that looked into a researcher tracked down as many of the people as he could that did not show up to work in the Twin Towers when 9/11 happened.
Oh, wow.
And a huge percentage of them had a dream that night that they should not go to work.
Oh, wow.
And many of them had strange occurrences, like trains that showed up late, taxis that broke down,
Mm-hmm.
stuff that was completely out of the normal. But
Wow, that's incredible.
but
Yeah.
I don't remember what the percentage was, but a significant percentage. There was, I can't remember the total number of people. It was hundreds
Mm-hmm.
that didn't show up,
Wow.
but a huge percentage of them had a prophetic dream that something really bad was going to happen and they shouldn't go to work. And even people that were flying in that day canceled flights because their dreams were so intense and lived to tell about it.
That's incredible. Now that is quite a pathetic dream there to be able to save your life in that circumstance.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
So that's the difference. A prophetic dream points to something coming,
Yeah.
and it's usually got something to do with a life or a death situation.
Mm-hmm.
And then the rest of the dreams all are analyzed. For example, if you told me that you had a dream of a dog last night,
Mm-hmm.
I would ask you first and foremost, what does a dog mean to you?
Right.
What is
Yeah.
your personal concept and relationship to a dog? Have you ever had a dog? What was your relationship with the dog like?
Mm-hmm.
And so then once I know what that dog means to you, then I know what a symbol of a dog might be pointing to in your psyche.
Right. That makes more sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, you see, you can have someone who completely loves dogs,
Mhm.
but then there's people that hate dogs.
Yeah.
So if a person keeps having dreams about dogs that hates dogs, then it makes me immediately want to know about their relationship with dogs, because that tells me something that's usually going to be relevant, that's almost always tied to an experience like getting bit by a dog.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
Right. Like a fear thing or something like that.
yeah.
Yeah.
So then I might say, okay, well, you got bit by a dog, so you have a negative orientation toward dogs. Who's biting you right now? Is there somebody biting you in your life right now? Or are you biting somebody else? Like, are you going through a divorce? Or
Right.
are you leaving a job because you're upset at somebody? Within minutes, it almost always points right back to, oh, yes, I'm going through a divorce. And how are you handling your relationship with your husband? Oh, he's a
Yeah.
complete asshole, blah, blah, blah. Okay, there you go. So the dream's telling you that you're acting toward your husband like that dog that bit you.
Oh, wow.
And you're maintaining the same relationship to the husband as you have been to dogs, which is to not like any of them. So you're dogless.
Oh, that's sad.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's so good. That's so interesting. Oh my God. Yeah. Now I can look at my dreams a little differently now. I had a dream last night about a citrus tree. Like I looked up at the tree, and as I was looking up at the tree, the citrus came out on it, and I was just in awe with it. And yeah, lots of things happen in my dreams. But
Well,
yeah.
would you like to know what that classically means?
What does it mean?
Trees
Uh-huh.
are probably the most common symbol for life in a dream.
Mm.
And fruiting means that you're in the fruiting phase of your life.
Oh,
It means that you are at the point in your life where you're going to begin to truly bear fruit.
ah,
So I would
yeah,
then say, see, to do a proper dream analysis, you cannot diagnose somebody.
yeah,
You,
yeah,
I can only ask questions. So as a therapist, I know what the tree symbolizes.
right.
So I could say, what's your experience of trees? There's lots of ways to do a dream, and I've studied many systems, so I have a whole toolbox. But whenever I see a dream like that,
Yeah,
my first question is, what's going on in your life right now, and how are you feeling about what's coming out of you?
really good. I mean, I'm feeling like I'm going into new territory in my life,
Mhm.
something I've never done before.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like what's coming out of me is just, I guess, just a lot of beauty and things that I want to share with the world and
Fruit.
expressions. Yeah, yeah,
There you go.
yeah.
Fruit.
And inspiration.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when fruit is ripe, it's juicy and sweet.
Yeah.
And so when we're in our creative flow, there's a sense of juiciness and sweetness that's more fulfilling than almost anything else we can put in our mouth.
Yeah.
Right? Chocolate won't do it.
Right.
Sometimes the sex won't even do it.
Yeah.
Meaning you can have great sex, but get up and go, okay, now I got to get back to my process of creating
Yes.
versus let's have more sex.
Right. Right.
In fact, the sex can get in the way of it.
Yeah, I
It's
believe
okay,
it.
that's enough. I got something I got to do.
I got to do this.
Get me my notebook.
Yeah, and as like you were and I were talking before this started, you were and I felt the same way. As there's nothing that I can do now without having passion for it. It has to be in my heart.
Mhm.
It has to be something I'm really excited about.
Yeah.
And otherwise, I'm just not going to do it anymore. And I'm at that point in my life. I had done that for before. I'd do
Mhm.
things because I felt obligated or needed to do it.
Mhm.
At this point, I don't feel like that is what I'm here to do anymore. I'm
Mhm.
here to go with what my heart tells me to do, and my passion, and connect with that.
That's one of the key ways the soul guides us.
Mm-hmm.
When our soul contract with a person or a given relationship, personal, professional, or otherwise, or our relationship with a piece of land or
Right.
a city comes to an end, and we have met the needs that we came to that relationship or place or experience for, then it loses its sense of nourishment for us. And then it begins to feel like Groundhog Day.
Yeah.
And then we start to feel uncomfortable. And that's how the soul lets you know it's time to move on. Where people get more stuck is that they keep using the same kind of challenging beliefs and behaviors that kept them in the relationship too long to try to figure out what they're going to do next.
Yes.
And that's a dangerous place to go to the next thing. I teach all my students and patients, your heart is the only reliable compass you have.
Yeah.
Doesn't
Yeah.
matter what the compass on your phone or in your hand tells you. If that compass says go east and your heart says go north, you better listen to your heart.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you might end up with money,
Right.
but no value.
In other words, what I hear you saying, Paul, is that you're going to outgrow your beliefs, your old beliefs, and when you do that, and even maybe values too.
Mhm.
And once that happens, the heart needs to it always really needs to be driving the car, is what I hear you say.
Mhm.
And I believe that too. And also, I guess, to keep that in check with what you currently believe, and that's one of the things I teach my clients, and also talk about in the book. Initially, your foundations are what are you currently believing
Mhm.
about yourself, your body, your life.
Mhm.
What values do you hold aside from others? And I think that has been the most incredible foundational tool, especially this past year, because I saw so many people just like kind
Believing.
of let go of those, right? You know,
Believing.
believing, yes, believing stuff that,
Mhm.
yeah, they might not really believe, or maybe believing out of fear, you
Yeah.
know,
Mhm.
and they just kind of threw their values or whatever values they were living by before, maybe
Mhm.
out the window with that. And I wasn't sure what happened. I was like, what is going on? Like, am I in bizarro world or what?
Oh,
you know?
yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is what happens when television becomes real.
Exactly. And I kept telling people, like, don't, like, that is, you got to remember that along with eating healthy food, moving well, you know, breathing clean air, you also have to be very discerning in what you watch,
Mhm.
what you take in informational wise, you know,
Mhm.
what you think.
I always remind my students and my patients, the word television means tell a vision,
Right.
and the word belief means be live.
Oh,
So
yeah.
whatever you believe becomes your life.
Oh, I never thought about it like that. That's great.
It
Yeah.
it is to be live.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So if you believe that some virus is going to attack you and kill you and blah blah blah, then
It'll happen.
you'll manifest it.
Yeah.
You're doing. I mean, all you got to do is look at the research on placebo and nocebo studies, and people
Yeah.
that don't even realize they're manifesting are manifesting.
I know. It's like, how many of those tests do we have to do to realize that we're creating what we're experiencing, right?
Well, the reality of it is, and this is scientific fact, anybody can look up, most drugs that are manufactured by drug companies cannot outperform a placebo.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they have to
Yeah.
go back and keep trying to hop the drug up till they can beat a placebo.
That's crazy.
And, you know, Deepak Chopra was the one that I really learned this from years and years ago, that the nocebo, meaning, for example, when a doctor misdiagnoses somebody with cancer, they've now tracked many cases and shown that the person did not have cancer because they'd previously had scans and they had no sign of it. And it was close enough to the time that they were misdiagnosed, and that they often manifested cancer in as little as a week.
Wow.
Very quickly.
Oh my goodness.
And then only later did the doctor realize that they were looking at the scans of another person, for example.
Oh, geez.
But the person left with the diagnosis. And in my library, I've actually got in one of my theosophy books that's talking about the power of the mind.
Mhm.
They tell a story about a medical doctor who had heard how powerful the mind could be, but didn't believe it. So he decided to run a test on his own child.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So he let the school teacher and his wife know that he wanted to do this test, but not to worry because he doesn't even believe in it. And so what he did is, when his kid woke up, he says to his son, "Oh, how are you feeling, son? You look a bit like you're coming down with the flu." And his son says, "I feel fine." So then when he sat down to have breakfast, his mother says, "How are you doing? You look like maybe you've got a fever or something." And he says, "No, Mom, I feel fine." And so then he goes to school, and the school teacher, who's in on it,
Right.
says, "Are you feeling okay? You're looking a bit maybe like you've got the flu." And within an hour or two, he came down with the flu.
Wow.
And so the medical doctor realized, wow, suggestion is extremely powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And then had to tell his kid, "You don't actually have the flu. You've got a mind virus." And it's producing the symptoms of the flu because that's what you believe.
And is that what some of what your book is about, Paul?
Well, my book's really, my book is, wow. I've been wanting to write this for a long time, but the whole COVID situation triggered such a sense of urgency in me to see how many people are completely lost and confused and have lost their ability to discern real information from fake information, and truth from fantasy and fallacy, and corruption and manipulation. And we're at an important time in the world right now where, if we're not careful, we can really collapse the entire environment. I mean, I won't go into all the reasons why, because I have on so many of my podcasts, but I've spent my entire life studying, as you know, everything to do with the human being and the human life and nature and metaphysics and every of the sciences that I have to really look into to really understand, why people get diseases that you'd think would be healthy and shouldn't get them, and why people have seemingly an endless string of bad luck in their life, and all these things. Humans are complicated people, right? We're complicated organisms.
Yeah.
And so my soul began telling me it's time for you to share your knowledge with the world in a publicly digestible format, and take basically all of your teachings and synthesize it down into. So I'm actually using the same system I teach in HLC 3, 0 to 10. So I show how the universe, first what God is, from my experience, which is a lot of research.
Yeah.
More than most people will ever do, because that's the biggest question I've always had. But I began having mystical experiences when I was 8 that gave me a footing from which I could discern what people were writing and saying about God was true or not. And most of it is completely and utterly so wrong. It's just scary.
Yeah.
And for a lot of people, it is scary. It ruins lives. So then I go through the steps. 1, love. What is your dream? 2, forces that create everything in the universe. How do they play out in your life, and how do you look for them so you know where your imbalances are? 3, choices. There's only 3 choices we can make in relationship to any person, place, or thing: the optimal, the suboptimal, and do nothing. 4, doctors. Why are those important? Because those are the most important categories of values. What is happy making for you? How much movement do I need to be healthy, vital, and live my dream? How should I eat to nourish my body's needs from meal to meal? And Dr. Quiet is rest and introspection. So Dr. Happy, Dr. Movement, Dr. Diet, Dr. Quiet, all of which, of course, you know very well.
Yes.
And then there's, in each of the number categories, there's multiple expressions of 3 and 4 and 1 and 2. So I show how that what we live in is an octave of creation. And so I encapsulate the octave of creation that the human experience is within, from 0 to 10.
Oh, wow.
So 10 would be another octave. So the astral plane would be number 1.
So meaning like through
meaning
kind
the
of
next
sound,
one.
color, all those different ways of looking at it. Yeah.
Yes. Basically, sound and light
light
are synonymous for how the entire universe is created.
Yeah.
Without, metaphysically speaking, light is a product of sound. Sound is the word used in metaphysics to describe all vibration, from the fastest moving waves and particles that we have all the way to the slowest. So point being is that sound and light really are the basis of all creation. Matter is just light moving slightly slower than the speed of light. And sound is a term that describes anything that's moving metaphysically.
Okay.
So at any frequency, from radio waves to gamma and X-ray, that's all considered sound in metaphysical lingo.
Okay.
The great sages all said that, look, in the Bible, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, right?
Yeah.
So there you see, right, in the Christian heritage, the Word, it didn't say in the beginning was light.
Right.
It said in the beginning was the Word. But the Word is something that comes by way of sound.
Yeah.
Right? So then I go to 5, which is the most essential factors for developing your own program for changing your life, or an exercise program, because there's 5 factors that have to be addressed or you're probably not going to be successful.
Right.
And then we have the 5 elements, which is what creation emerges through. And so I have my own system of alchemy that I've developed that works.
Balancing those elements within the.
Yes, my system works in the physical, the emotional, the mental, and the spiritual realm. So it's not bound to any one realm.
Yeah.
For example, chemical alchemy is bound to the realm of chemistry.
Right.
But psychological alchemy is bound to the realm of the psyche. And my system will work in any realm because it works on the principles of creation that are behind all realms.
Yes, it's holistic.
Yeah, it's holistic.
Yeah.
And then 7 is the 7 chakras and the themes of the 7 chakras, and how to use that awareness to know, why our life is the way it is, or how we can heal, or how we can use those chakras as gateways to gaining much more access on issues or the future, or however you want to use them. They're portals to other dimensions. And then 8 is self-reflection. Because an 8 is a 0 with a twist. In my system, God is 0 because unconditional love can only be symbolized by a 0 because anything else is a condition. And so 8 is 0 with a twist, which means it's looking back at itself. 9 is a new level of awareness. So it means, for example, the addict who's been off of the drug or the addiction, say for a year, has now reached a new level of awareness, but they're not completely through yet. 10 is a new level of being.
Yeah.
So 10 means you are no longer, the training wheels are off the bike. You're now an individuated whole being.
Yeah, you've kind of brought in all those indiscrepancies from within together, bring them back together. Yeah.
Now I'm just giving a very kind of glossed over, because it's there's a lot to it.
Sounds very comprehensive.
Yeah, it is. There's a lot to it. And so my biggest challenge is, how do I take what it takes years to teach my students? Most people take about 1.5 years to go through HLC training, 4 years to go through Chek practitioner training, 1.5 years through my PPS success mastery training. So that's 7 years. So I'm doing my very best to take the essence of 7 years of professional training and putting it into a book with a workbook and an online training program.
That's
so
cool.
that I can actually support people, and I'll have mentors that will work with people to help them apply the teachings in their life. And I have a whole section on the tree of contemplative practices so that people can get an outline of the different types of meditation, from active to passive to seated to contemplative to breathing practices. So I will show the tree of contemplative practices and then help people decide where should I start based on my profile and what my needs are.
That's great. That's fantastic.
So I've been, doing the research on this book my whole life, but it was probably about 3 years ago that my soul started telling me it was time to make this knowledge more accessible to the public. And so I had been trying to figure out how in the world, with my schedule and my podcast and everything, am I going to take the time to write a book? I've written 11 already, so I know what it takes. And it's, it takes a lot of focus, and writing a book is not a simple process. It's not like, as simple as just blapping a bunch of thoughts down on a piece of paper.
Right. You do have to have some research in there, right?
Well, there's editing and there's layout and there's
Are
cover
you doing
design.
the editing yourself?
Well,
or you have
Penny does all that.
I was going to say,
all my books are self-published.
Oh, okay. I was going to ask you about that actually, because as you know, I'm at a certain point of publishing my first book, and I'm working on the proposal and deciding what way I want to go with it. And I've heard a lot of people become very successful self-publishing, and I was wondering, I couldn't remember if I remembered seeing a publisher on your book.
Chek Institute.
Oh yeah, that's amazing.
All of them.
Yeah.
The reason is because when I tried to get How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy published, I hired a very successful literary agent who's been the agent for many, big sellers. I don't know if you remember the Ken Blanchard's, I think it was called the 1 Minute Manager series.
I think I do remember that.
They were
very
big,
vaguely.
big,
Yeah.
big for quite a while. She was his agent. And we went to the top 10 publishers and flew to New York, and every single one of them said the same thing. They said, if what you're sharing in this book is true, it means every one of our authors on diet and fitness is wrong.
Oh, wow.
And therefore, if we publish this, we're going to have a coup on our hands, or it's going to cause trouble, or people aren't going to believe it. And I said,
Wow.
it is true, and I can prove it to you. And I brought a whole kit of my assessment tools so I could show them. I could measure things like pelvic tilt core function for them, just like I teach Czech professionals. And I could give them the right exercises,
Right.
show them in seconds. I can change their structure. I can change their posture.
Mm-hmm.
I can show them what's wrong in their diet by looking at them and asking a few questions. And every time I hit the bullseye for them, and they were all in shock. But the bureaucratic end of it, for example, this is the year 2000. And I'm telling people in my book, of course, eat butter, eat saturated fat, eat animal foods as long as they're from clean sources.
Mm-hmm.
And all the books at that time, in fact, it had been over 20 years, if I remember right, since any major book ever mentioned anything about the health benefits of saturated fats, because the publishers are in bed with a lot of these big industries, you see, so they don't want to publish stuff that goes against the agenda. And so the Judith Regan, who published the Zone Diet, offered me $35,000 for the rights to my book. I said, I'm not going to do that for $35,000. You have no investment in it, and if it goes out of print, you own the right copyright on my book.
Right.
So
Yeah.
after spending months and months and months meeting with publishers and getting the same silly reactions, Penny and I just said, let's just publish it ourselves. And we'd already published my golf biomechanics manual, and I can't remember what else. I think my Eat, Move, and Be Healthy book was like my third or fourth book. It was my first kind of public book, But we've sold, I think, 185 or 190,000 copies now.
Wow. Yeah, and you guys did an incredible job publishing those books, even before self-publishing was a big thing.
Yeah,
So,
we actually Penny entered the Golf Biomechanics Manual and How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy, and I think both of them got a runners-up award in a publishing contest. They analyze your book and they award whose book's the best, and we got runner-up 2 times.
That's incredible. That's inspiring.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, one of the things, too, is a lot of the publishers don't want to use a lot of diagrams, and they don't want to use color because it makes the expense of the book go up.
Oh, I see.
So
Yeah.
I wanted my book to have lots of images, and I wanted it to be applicable to all learning styles. So, and I didn't want it to be black and white. I wanted it to be color.
Mm-hmm.
So it pushes the price way up. I think, our books probably cost us, I'm guessing, around $5.50 a unit, our cost,
Mm-hmm.
but done the way most of the publishers want it to be around $1.
Oh, wow. That's crazy.
Yeah, but I didn't want a cheesy book for left brain mathematical logical people that nobody can understand. I mean, how do you teach a single arm cable push or a core exercise in black and white text? I mean, that's just ridiculous.
Yeah, totally. I agree with that. Those are concepts that have a lot of nuance to them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's a sad fact, but the only 8% of people in the world, based on, I think, it was Howard Gardner's research, learn optimally in the mathematical logical learning style, which is basically print reading text.
Yeah. Oh, right.
And the greatest percentage of people, 38%, are visual learners, so they need to see images or see what you're trying to tell them. The next greatest is the auditory, and the next is the kinesthetic.
Okay.
So you have 8% at the mathematical logical, about 38% in the visual, and then, I don't know, something like 16% kinesthetic, and the rest, auditory, and then the rest is kinesthetic.
Mm-hmm.
So your smallest group, 8%, interestingly turns out to be how 98% of all education is given in elementary school through universities worldwide, but it only applies to 8% of people, which is one of the main reasons we have so many people with advanced degrees that can't do anything.
Yeah, no wonder I didn't like school.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was so boring for me. Yeah, and that's why in my book as well, I'm giving people opportunities to journal, as well as I'm going to be doing some additional meditations with frequency behind it, and it's more interactive as well.
Yeah.
So, I thought that was important because, yeah, like you say, if you're reading something, that's all well and good. You're taking in the information, but in order to integrate the information, that it takes one step more of really feeling it, experiencing it. Your own experience of it as well plays a part, right? And how
Yeah.
you perceive that as well. So I didn't want it to just be a book where you would read kind of my perception or my take on it and not have your own experience of it, right? And so that was something I put some thought into as well. And yeah,
Mine's going to be a quite a mind bender for most people, from the perspective of the fact that I've spent my life researching not only what God is, but what consciousness is. And I'm amazed at how completely confused the scientific community is about what consciousness is.
Yeah.
And all these really shallow arguments by people with advanced degrees who are dead sure they're right. And
yeah,
I'm
how
like,
can you know that you're absolutely right about
well,
that?
the thing is I look at this stuff and I go, these are people that have never had a mystical experience.
Yeah.
They're trying to describe something objectively with no experience of it.
Yeah.
Which is very much like the old Hindu painting of the elephant with 7 blind men or blindfolded wise men trying to figure out what it is. And, one's touching the elephant's belly and he says, this is a wall. And the other one's got his leg. He says, this is a tree. And the other one says, got his nose. This is a fire hose. And they're all sure they're right, but none of them realizes they're holding on to an elephant.
That's great. I love that.
So I've spent a lot of time recording my mystical experiences, and I have journals and journals full of not only the experiences, but diagrams that I drew and images that I drew while I was having these experiences. And then I would go and say, okay, is there other people that have had these experiences? Is there anything in science that backs this up? I.e., like the science of consciousness or parapsychology or psychology or depth psychology or process psychology, etc. And in I would say 90 to 95% of the cases, I've been actually able to find people that have had identical experiences, either with near-death experiences or shamanic plant medicine experiences or deep meditative experiences, or mystics that have had these experiences, or science that's pointing in the direction of these experiences. And so what I've done is I've developed a model of what we call God. It's you cannot encapsulate God, but I've developed a model that brings you to the edge of the mystery so that you can begin to comprehend what that word really does mean.
Yeah.
Because once you really understand what that word really means, then the playing field is wide open.
Yeah.
Because that belief, which in Jungian psychology is linked to the archetype called the imago Dei, which is your image of deity, which Jung shows very clearly is the first archetype. All other archetypes in our consciousness emerge out of the imago Dei.
Right.
So what your beliefs about God are have the greatest influence on any other belief or idea or experience or archetype acting on you. Because God as source is source.
Yeah.
So image of deity means what a person perceives God is, and how they relate to God turns out to be very largely how they relate to themselves, and they relate to other people, and they relate to the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
So having spent my whole life working on these concepts, teaching them, refining them, but also going deeper and deeper into my own spiritual practices and pursuits, I've now been able to diagram things so that concepts that are very hard to communicate to people can be communicated visually.
Mm-hmm.
And I've studied the world religions looking for evidence that people have had experiences or explain things in a way that's coherent with the experiences that I've had. And I found them all over the place in Rumi's writings. I found them in Hazrat Inyat Khan's writing, who's another Sufi. I found lots of excellent stuff that just matches my experience in Tantra.
Yeah.
I've studied a lot of Tantra, and I'm like, well, these guys got their shit together.
Yeah.
These tantric masters and wise men and women were dialed in really well. And you can find it in mystical Christianity. You can find it in mystical Judaism, the Kabbalah. And they're all saying the same things, but they're often using different labels.
Right.
But once you say, okay, what does this mean in Kabbalah? And what's the correlating word in Sufism or the Islamic tradition? And what's the correlating word in Christianity and in Taoism, etc.? You actually find, strangely enough, that they're all saying the same things.
Yeah.
Now, when I say they're all, I'm meaning the most evolved of them. Not the preachers and the pastors and the people hanging out in churches. I'm talking about people that are, in caves or in the world. Like Kabir was a Hindu Muslim mystic. He was half Muslim and half Hindu, but his whole philosophy was, if you go out and sit in a cave, you're running from the world. So anybody can run from the world. If you can't apply your spiritual wisdom in your life, then it's not useful wisdom. It's just a fantasy.
Right.
So he was a weaver, and he had a wife, and he was what's called a householder, and all of his teachings were really about how do you take the depth of your wisdom, your understanding, your spiritual practices, and your awareness of what God is into the family, into the workplace. And Kabir was a very powerful mystic and teacher. Songs of Kabir would be a great book for you to read.
Okay.
It's fantastic. I've probably read it 15 times.
Yeah, and it sounds like, and to me that is all those different expressions, like you're saying, are similar, really similar things. They're saying the same thing, but they're just expressing them differently, or they have a different perspective or a different take on that. That is, to me, an example of really how we all work and what we're doing anyway. But yet we're telling each other, "You're wrong, I'm right." Instead of with that, and to some level, there's some cognitive dissonance there because we are not realizing that conflict within ourselves at times, right? When we're making other people wrong. And
yes, I think the biggest part of that issue that you've just described is that very few people's opinions are based on authentic experience. They're based on program beliefs.
Yes.
They're based on what somebody else taught them in a school, in a university, or in a church, or their parents put into their heads, but they're not lived experiences.
Right.
Like, I can't tell you how many times I've been in universities where professors were telling me how a certain exercise had to be done, or giving me scientific facts about this or that. And I look at them and say, two things. One, you're wrong.
Right.
Two, you don't know how to lift weights. So what you're trying to do is put mathematical figures to something that somebody else is doing, but it's clear to me as a highly skilled weightlifter that you yourself are like someone writing a book about meditation that doesn't meditate.
Yeah,
and I will prove it to you. And so I prove it to them. And then they're like, oh, well, how did that happen?
Yeah.
Well, like you can't do this, or you can't do that. So yes, you can.
Yeah.
Or
right.
This is doing that. No, that's not how that's happening. You got your wires crossed. But I get this everywhere I go. And so I think what's going on largely in the world, which is part of the process of being in the world, is that people keep investing in beliefs and ideas until they realize that their life is so shitty that the drugs won't fix it, the surgery won't fix it, and reading the Bible or the Quran or the Torah or whatever isn't fixing it. So eventually you come to a crisis point, which is what a lot of my patients are, people that have reached this place,
Right.
where you realize I'm the common denominator in all this.
Mhm.
You can only point the
Right.
finger outward and play the victim card and the saboteur card and the prostitute card and these kinds of things for so long. So a person gets to a point where if they really want to heal and create freedom for themselves, they have to stand in the mirror and they got to look right into their own eyes and ask, with every one of these ideas, is it really true?
Yes.
And is it enhancing my life? And how do I feel, as Byron Katie would say, how do I feel when I think that thought?
Yeah.
And what happens if I turn it around?
Yeah.
And I hopped her system up and said, not just what happens when you turn it around, because now you're just playing tiddlywinks. Every positive has a negative.
Yeah.
But how does the turnaround relate to your personal dream?
Right.
Because if the turnaround, she loves me, she doesn't love me, the question is, do you want to be loved and give love to her?
Exactly. Yeah.
If the answer is yes, then she doesn't love me, can be she does love me, and I need to ask her why she's upset at me instead of projecting that it's just her being rude or snotty or bitchy or whatever.
Right.
Right. But the point I'm driving at is that we're at a time in the evolution of human beings where we are not questioning our beliefs and we're believing almost anything people tell us.
Yeah.
And it's destroying each other and the planet. And it's leading to all the mayhem we have right now.
Right.
So part of what I'm trying to teach in my book is how do you actually own and use a mind effectively so that it really does what a mind can do.
Right.
Because as some wise person said, a mind is a much better tool than a master.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And it sounds like we're talking about very similar things, Paul, as it doesn't surprise me because you have been one of my mentors and teachers over the years, and I've learned a lot from you. But yeah, in a way, I'm making it really simple for people to understand more about themselves, how to align the mind, the body, and the soul, the spirit with, and being able to, like you said, understand themselves better, know themselves better, and use that to love themselves, and just unconditionally. Like we put so many conditions on other people and ourselves as it relates to love. Like how can we take those conditions away? And it's a process for many people because they have learned that conditions are what you're supposed to do or what they think you're supposed to do to receive love, but they've never really, a lot of people haven't learned how to really receive unconditional love, maybe through other people or giving it to themselves, receiving it for themselves, So I think that is a major problem in how we relate to each other.
Yeah.
And even the earth and how we treat and what we place of great importance to ourselves and in our lives. How we relate to nature as nature is us. We are nature. We're not a part of. We're not apart from it.
No.
So if we, but yet we think of our bodies like machines or something, or like technology. This whole thing, and I'm like, we're not computers. Our body is nature. We're a part of it. We're not separate from it. So,
well, I'll throw you a twist there.
Yeah.
We're not part of it until we are not part of it. And what I mean by that is that the human being has reached a point in its development where its mental capacity is such that it now worships ideas as more real than the facts of its own body and its own experience as nature. Bears don't light forest fires and pour chemicals in rivers.
Right.
Right? birds don't destroy their own nests,
That's true.
right? So
Yeah.
when you look at nature, nature is really largely an unconscious process of creating life itself.
Right.
But Steiner warned that most people's diseases are the byproducts of consciousness. And what he means by that, I'll give you a very simple example. A child who's never heard that God will burn it in hell for touching its genitals
Right.
is unconscious that a God like that even exists. So it expresses its creativity and relates to itself naturally
Mhm.
as a being of nature. But once it's programmed with these ideas and concepts, it now has ideas and concepts that it's acting out that are causing it to depart not only from nature, but its nature.
Yeah.
Once people believe that they're smart enough to outsmart nature with technology, and they get too far into scientific materialism and they think the world is just a bunch of rocks and that trees are just wood and that it's just all resources we can use willy-nilly,
Mhm.
now we're not part of nature anymore.
Yeah.
So our bodies are always part of nature and they're always governed by the laws of nature, but the things that we make ourselves conscious of actually are great impingements against the laws and principles of nature,
Yes.
because most of them aren't true, but they're believed as fact,
Mhm.
and they are often backed by what we call science.
Yeah.
But the reality is that the outcome of any scientific research is always based on two things: the question and how it was asked, and the methods used to get the answer,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So I can summarize that little paradox quite simply. The highest quality of research in medicine is called double-blind research.
Right. Right.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
let me ask you, how long could you survive in nature double-blind?
Not very long.
Not long at all.
No,
Okay,
no.
so there you see that what we call the gold standard of academic research is double-blind,
Yeah.
which means to isolate, and make sure there's no possible way anything's affecting this research. And then we think we're so smart because we go, oh, look, people get sick when they have too much cortisol, so well, let's make a drug that lowers cortisol. Okay, good. Guess what, guys? You did one thing you shouldn't have done. You forgot to ask what it is that causes the
Yes.
cortisol to go up. That can
Right.
be physical causes, biochemical causes, infectious diseases, parasites, funguses. It can be self-esteem problems, relationship problems, money problems.
Mhm.
And here
Yeah.
you are just putting a drug in someone's body to lower the stress response,
Which is natural.
that decreases inflammation in the body and
Yeah.
prepares a person to take action when they're in trouble.
Yeah.
Right? But that's the gold standard of research. So now what do
Mhm.
we have? A bunch of people on drugs walking around like zombies, eating garbage food,
Yes.
investing in corporations that are destroying the planet. And there
Yeah.
you see my point. Those
Yeah.
people are not part of nature.
Well, exactly. And I've often wondered why we try to solve a problem that's natural with something that's unnatural, right? Oftentimes we do that. Like so many times. It's the go-to,
Mhm.
it seems like. And I'm like, why? I feel like people are smart enough to realize that this doesn't work, you know?
Well, I can
Um,
tell you the answer to that.
Okay. In money.
You got it.
Yeah.
Right? If I'm a doctor and you come to me and I say, look, you need more potassium, just eat more bananas,
Yeah.
then how much money do you make on that?
Probably
But if
not
you say,
much.
wait a minute, what's in them bananas? Okay, we got the magic ingredients. Now let's make a pill out of it.
Mhm.
And oh, by the way, you can't patent anything that comes from nature. So what we got to do is synthesize it. Then we can put a
Right.
patent on it. Then we can protect it. And then we can charge you 5 times as much as it's worth.
Mhm.
And now we have a business.
That's right.
And so that's why the healthcare industry is a disease maintenance industry,
yeah. Yes.
because it's not profitable to actually tell people how nature works.
It's
'Cause it's way more
profitable to
simple.
rape and pillage nature.
Yes, that seems to be the case. And I remember hearing from I think Mark England mentioned this in a podcast I did with him about Rudolf Steiner,
Hmm.
mentioning that, he said at one point something about anything that's unnatural is Luciferian in nature, right?
Yeah,
Or-
that's the Steiner approach. By the way,
Yeah.
you see that whole shelf of books?
yeah.
That's my collection of Steiner's
Wow,
books.
yeah.
There's about 180 of Steiner's books there, or books written by experts on Steiner.
Yeah. So you know about Steiner.
25 years of hard Steiner research. Yeah, I got a bit of a clue on him. But yes, the Luciferian is a concept that means it's going against the harmony of life.
Yeah.
They have an Abrahamic principle or Aramonic principle as well, which is trapped in matter, getting stuck in matter, addicted to matter. There's many aspects to these
Yeah.
things. I mean, Steiner's got whole books on these things. But anyhow, continue.
Oh, I thought maybe you could elaborate on that a little bit because that sounded interesting to me. Just given the state of like what people are talking about a lot these days, and how the Luciferian stuff is coming out, and
Mhm.
as far as people doing rituals around that and everything, and I just thought that was interesting because really. It's not something that's so sensational as much as it is something that we've been living in for a long time in a natural state, really trying to, solve the problem that is natural and could be solved easily by something that's unnatural. So we have the kind of going against nature, the Luciferian way or whatever within a lot of things in our society, I think, which I never really thought about it like that, but it makes sense.
There's a variety of different veins of Luciferian. I mean, there's 32 or 33,000 branches of Christianity now, all claiming to have the truth of Jesus.
Yeah.
So my point is, just as Christianity is very confused, there's many approaches to it. Satanism and Luciferianism are also sects that can have similar qualities, but also very different qualities. But I've actually met and know and have had clients that practice Luciferianism and some Satanism. But the most common thing I hear is it's the practice of freedom.
Oh, okay.
It's the practice of freedom. And almost all of them have been wounded by largely Christianity and Orthodox religious fundamentalist silliness. So, look, if you're a child and your father beats you a lot or sexually abuses you, it's fairly natural to have inhibitions about men for the rest of your life, isn't it?
Yes.
Well, think of how many people have been physically, emotionally, and mentally, and often sexually, especially in the Catholic Church, harmed by what was supposed to be the Word of God.
Yes.
So I have empathy for people going into Luciferianism and Satanism. Now, yes, a lot of the stuff they're into and the dark worship and evil stuff is repulsive. But look, how do you create a psychopath? Well, start by telling them that God's going to burn you in hell for touching your genitals or sinning, and then whip the child if they don't dress a certain way, and spare the rod and spoil the child and all this crap.
Right. Yeah.
And so you play that game long enough and you produce enough damaged children that they are desperate for something that gives them a sense of safety and freedom. And then when they see that people that do lots of drugs and do crazy shit and rip people off are living a lot better than them, well, they've got nothing left to lose at this point.
Right.
So why not try that? These people seem happier than the God-fearing people that tortured me all my life.
Yeah, I can see how that could happen.
So almost all these people that I've talked to come from a background of complete dissatisfaction, distrust, and pain with God's path as it is sold in churches, which I call corporate religion.
Yes.
But, so I think that it's one of those topics where most people simply associate Luciferianism with evil, like doing harm to people. But a lot of the Luciferians that I've met are completely
amazing people that run
Yeah, I don't know much
major
about it.
businesses and corporations. They're not
Yeah.
running out there marketing that they do this,
Mhm.
but some of them are famous people. I can't mention their names, but I know famous people that actually live a beautiful life.
And it works for them, it sounds
It works
like.
for them, and they're
Yeah.
not harming anybody. I
Yeah.
just think that a lot of people don't really have enough depth of understanding of Luciferianism or Satanism to know what it is that's really driving those people. It's
Mhm.
only the few that are psychopathic,
Oh,
that
okay.
that are, like there's all this stuff about Bill Gates being involved in this, and there's been stuff about presidents and all sorts of stuff. And I can't say if that's true or not, but I think that when you put those things up against what the Catholic Church has done,
Oh God, yeah.
it's
that's-
just,
it's
it's
awful.
okay. Well, choose the way you want to die slowly. I mean, you just put money in a different hat. That's
Yes,
all.
that's
It's
very
the
true.
Same shit.
Very good point, Paul.
Hello, everybody. How are you? How have you been doing this year? I'm asking these questions in all seriousness. When I ask them of people nowadays, they may say they're fine, or they're getting by, or maybe a better than most. But none of them say I'm thriving. I know it's no surprise to you. You listen to my podcast, so you know all about what's going on in the world right now. Many of you have had careers derailed, struggled with your relationships, or felt the bite of money problems. But I'm not talking to you now to get wrapped up in all the challenges we're facing. I'm speaking to you right now just to say getting by isn't enough, and you don't have to settle for that. It's time for all of us to thrive, and we can do it. If you're skeptical, this month I'm going to show you how. For the entire month of April, you'll find a ton of special videos, Instagram live sessions, and 2 solo podcasts I've recorded, all focused on providing you with the tools and motivation to thrive personally and professionally, even under the toughest of times. I had a great time recording these podcasts. They're on important topics that I haven't spoken about before, and I really want to give you a preview, but I'm keeping it secret for now. I think you're going to love them, though. To cap the month off, you'll be able to get some real nutrition to thrive during our special 3-day registration event on April 30th through May the 2nd. For those 3 days, you can register for any of the Chek Institute advanced training programs at incredible prices. That's all of my advanced programs too, including my Functional Holistic Lifestyle Coach Level 1 course that has launched many careers in the field of holistic health and optimization, and it's also the course I produced for the public so that anyone could get themselves healthy, vital, and thrive. If you're done with just getting by, if you're ready to make use of your boundless potential and be the best version of yourself personally and professionally, then here's my suggestion. Go to chekinstitute.com/thrive. You can do that now. You'll find our full schedule of events, and you'll find out how you can get a head start on registering for the Chek Advanced Training Program of your choice at our special Thrive rates. That's chekinstitute.com/thrive. Let's grow together. Come join us. I'm excited to share with all of you. Did you know that Symbiotica means harmony? And you're really likely to enjoy my podcast with Shervin Jaffaria, the founder of Symbiotica. Symbiotica is an amazing company that makes excellent products to aid healing, enhance longevity, and improve performance at all levels of your being, from your spiritual practices to your athletic endeavors. I highly recommend you go to Symbiotica.com and check out their top-notch organically sourced products that include excellent tasting supplements like their Synergy Vitamin B12, which elevates energy naturally, to their Shilajit minerals, which help you better regulate your hormonal system. Their Biocharge activated coconut charcoal is an excellent detox support and removes toxins and poisons from the body quickly and non-invasively. Their organic longevity formula is one of my friends and students' favorites. They rave about it. I really enjoy their Regenesis liposomal glutathione for its amazing antioxidant powers, which is really helpful for anyone that enjoys vaporizing tobacco and herbs like I do. They also have great immune support products, water filtration options for drinking and showering, and some cool clothing and more. When you go to CYMBIOTIKA.com and use your Living4D discount code, which is capital C, capital H, capital E, capital K, 15 on checkout, you get 15% off anything they sell, and you won't be disappointed. Enjoy Symbiotica.
You were telling me in your new book, you're talking about the peaceful warrior. I'd love to hear what your sort of expression of the peaceful warrior is, especially in a kind of an interesting time in the world as now, because I think for those of us that are not so gullible, it's important to be a peaceful warrior.
It is.
Otherwise, if you're a violent warrior, you're really just another type of disease.
Yeah, and the peaceful warrior was my inspiration for that chapter in the book. It's called The Peaceful Warrior and the Crumbling. So my inspiration for that chapter was this movie that I watched a while back called The Peaceful Warrior.
I think I've seen it. Isn't that Dan Millman?
Yes, exactly.
I'll tell you a story about that real quick.
Oh, I would love to hear it. Yeah.
Dan Millman's publisher reached out to me many years ago and said that they were looking for health books that would support his teachings, and they had scanned the market and found my teachings to be very congruent with his teachings, and asked me if I'd be willing to write an ebook that they could sell on his platform, and that's how the 4 Doctors got created.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
That makes sense, though, to me. Yeah, I mean, it does. It is very similar in some ways from my experience of it, too, and knowing your work. Yeah, I mean, I really resonated with that story because I was a gymnast, and if you're familiar with that story, your listeners and my listeners, if you guys are familiar with that story, it is about a male gymnast who goes through an awakening process within himself, and it really resonated with me because I went through some similar experiences as a gymnast, where you have this sense of invulnerability or invincibility is what I meant to say. And it's like, wow, you can do all these things that not many other people can do. And it really feeds the ego in a way where you become that which you think that's what makes you special. It's your identity. That what you can do. And the story was really interesting to me because he ends up getting in this he's at the top of his game with his gymnastics. And then he ends up getting into this horrible motorcycle accident because he's really reckless at the same time, because he's very overconfident and makes these crazy risky moves, and so he ends up getting injured, and it essentially ruins his career as a gymnast. And as he's going through this process of parts of himself that are dying, and he's losing the identity as a gymnast, and how he was seen and what he felt like made him special, this guy appears to him who Nick Nolte plays in the movie. And also, of course, like you said, this is based off a book by Dan Millman. And he was also a gymnast, so this is partly
I have a feeling
about
it's
him.
really about his life.
I think it is.
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, and I believe the guy who appears, who is played by Nick Nolte, represented his grandfather, I think. And so, so this guy appears. You don't know if he's real. You don't know if he's just something that he's seeing in his head, or whatever. Or, if there's any, there might not be any difference between those two things. Who knows?
Well, you're always seeing everything in your head.
Yeah, that's true. So it's real interesting, but he comes to him, and he kind of presents like, himself as a mentor to him. And he doesn't really know where this guy came from, and he's kind of thrown off. And, but what happens as a result is, he starts to, time literally slows down in certain parts of it. He's noticing time is slowing down. He's starting to see beauty, and he almost has this crisis of self because he doesn't know what's happening to him. But really, it represents the identity that falls away within all of us, that there's this death and grief of certain identities that we had, which I think a lot of people experienced in 2020. And this is one of the reasons I included it in the book. But so what happens, I think, is magical, and I've experienced it too, is he starts to see the beauty in everything.
Mm-hmm.
And it slows down to the point where he can see that. And so he goes through an awakening process and starts to perceive life very differently. And so, the part where he loses his identity is what I call the crumbling. So your world, your reality, what you thought was real crumbles, and then you have to create this new sense of self and new awareness, and come out with a new perspective
Yeah.
because of that, And so that's what I saw happening on a mass scale in 2020. And
Still
so
going on.
I know, right? It's still happening.
Mhm.
So I felt like I really wanted to share that story with people so that they could begin to see that happening within themselves and within their own life, and begin then seeing what is real, because he thought he knew what was real,
Mhm.
the guy in the story, the gymnast, but what he comes to find out is that what he thought was real really isn't real, and now what he's seeing is real.
Mhm.
Right? So
Sounds like a shamanic journey to me.
totally, I think that's that's basically what he was trying to demonstrate in that movie, right?
Yeah.
So
And then you also are talking about the need to belong. I'd love to hear your kind of how you're framing that.
yeah, so the need to belong. We've got this need to belong that's a survival instinct.
Yeah.
And many of us, though, unfortunately, learn how to belong in a way that's conditional.
Yes, or painful.
Yeah, right.
So the paradox is you need the connection,
Yes.
but it creates pain.
Right. And you have to fit into a certain, box or category, or do certain things, or obligate yourself in order to belong, which is a form of suffering, in my opinion.
Oh, sure it is.
Yeah.
So
I wanted to bring light to some of these concepts for people so that they could understand, how they could unwind some of these things if they are willing to go there within themselves and really free themselves, truly liberate themselves from some of the suffering that is not necessary, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think a lot of suffering is not necessary. I think a lot of suffering boils down to belief systems.
Absolutely. And yeah, redefining those beliefs. And then when you can liberate yourself, you can redefine your beliefs, because sometimes it's hard to do that until you really know yourself enough to do
Yes.
that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's why when I'm doing marriage counseling, I always tell people, especially if they're married, don't get a divorce until you've spent a good year really honestly working on yourself with a skilled therapist, because you don't know who you are.
Right.
And it's not wise to make a decision that can affect children and family and cause a huge ripple effect that can really affect people for the rest of their lives, until you really are sure that your perspective on why you're wanting to leave the relationship is actually accurate and not just a projection of your own unconscious or your own shadow onto your partner.
Right.
And B, I tell people one of the most painful things I've ever seen people experience is jumping out of a marriage, getting a divorce quickly, and then realizing a year later that that's the person you truly love. And then when you go back, they're already in love with somebody else.
Yes.
And now the window or the door is closed. And that's when I've seen people go into a deep crisis, because now they have to deal with the fact that they were acting impulsively and not looking at the situation holistically, and often not even honestly.
Also can jump into a relationship with the same issues if
Of
they're not really diving deep into their unmet emotional needs, right? So
yeah,
that's a big thing that many people aren't aware of either. are you looking to other people to get your emotional needs met, your whatever you didn't get when you were a child? Or are you learning how to parent yourself that way?
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And that can spill over into relationships as well. Which, again, like not knowing yourself, not exploring that within yourself is a mistake in relationships, because then you just go in and repeat it again with someone else. Right?
Yeah. We always project our unconscious onto people, which means we actually only see what we want to see.
Yes.
In attachment theory, Diane Poole Heller, for example, says in her teachings on attachment disorders that it takes about 1.5 years for the projection system to break down.
Oh, wow.
Before you actually start seeing who it is that you're in a relationship with, instead of who you are projecting them to be.
Oh, right.
And that's when relationships usually start hitting tough times. But it's interesting because the average marriage today only lasts 2.5 years, and the average person is married 3 times in their lifetime. So when you consider that the average marriage only lasts 2.5 years, and it takes 1.5 years for the projection to break down, which we could call the honeymoon period.
Right.
When the sex wears
That's
off.
what I was going to say too.
Yeah. Once the drugs wear off from all the sex, then you go, oh, who is this person?
Yeah.
But what I'm pointing to is that based on that research, it means most people can only handle 1 more year with the person that they're now actually seeing without their projection.
Yes. Yes.
Which doesn't really do too well for people like Christians that say, till death do we part.
No.
And then end up sleeping on opposite sides of the bed and hanging in there for God.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, God's bored to death. Going, well, do me a favor. Try loving yourself more so that you're not torturing your partner with that task.
Yeah. Yeah. We put so much pressure on our partners to be everything for us until we've learned how to do that for ourselves. Like it's so important. You have to learn how to be intimate with yourself first.
Yes.
Before you can be with someone else.
One of the things you told me you're talking about is virtues versus righteous indignation. I'm very curious about that particular heading.
Yeah. Well, what is it? I think, what is it? Alan Watts had this statement about, I have it written in my book, but I can't say it word for word at this moment. But I think it's something like, virtue doesn't know it's a virtue, basically. So, if you're saying you're virtuous, then you're not really virtuous, because virtues aren't really meant to be acknowledged like that, right?
Yeah.
It just is, right? A butterfly has its colors and it can fly, and people love to watch them, but it's not it's a virtue, but they don't know it's a virtue. They're not aware of it, right? So, but yet we are in this time where we are treating virtues as if it's, something that we're like, it's a righteous indignation thing. Like we're above everybody else because we're virtuous, right? I'm seeing that a lot, and it's just been being thrown around,
especially in the medical community.
Yes, totally.
That's righteous, virtuous.
Yeah.
Sickness.
Yes, and it only gets you gets you so far, because again, now you're making someone wrong, and yourself right, and you're not really seeing yourself in other people. So you're not given that opportunity when you're making someone wrong all the time.
One of the things that I teach in, I'm trying to remember, I think it's my PPS program. I can't remember where I have a section on virtues, but I always tell people you have to be very conscious, because every virtue has its complementary opposite, which is a vice.
Yeah.
So if a person, for example, is so timely that it's stressful to them, and that they have a negative attitude towards other people that show up late, whether they had a good justification for it or not, then that becomes a vice. if you're good, but you don't realize that good's always a relative judgment. It's a relative value statement. What's good for one person is not good for another. What's good for a Christian might drive a Muslim crazy.
Yes.
A lot of this, again, stems from the religious idea that to be virtuous is to get closer to God.
Right.
You know,
Yeah,
so
that's true. That's probably where the message got skewed, right?
Mhm,
Like,
that's-
yeah.
you know, virtues are largely taught in religion
hmm
as how you get closer to God or behave in a way that's favorable to God, all of which completely, utterly ignores that if God is any form of love, it's unconditional love.
Yes.
And oh, by the way, if God is God, then guess what? You're God.
Yeah.
And so is the person that you're irritated at because they just showed up late.
Yes, exactly.
So
Yeah.
it's a, and Lao Tzu talks about this in the Tao Te Ching. You know, he talks about the dangers of virtues and morals,
hmm
and
Right.
because morals can be bent quite heavily too.
Absolutely. And I see that happening on a mass scale right now.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good topic. Stepping into your potential power.
Your personal power.
Personal
Yeah.
power, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, what is true? What is personal power, right? We don't really define that so much or get clear on what that is for each individual. But to me, it's your pure innocence.
Yeah. I think personal power really, the way I look at it is agency,
Mm-hmm.
right? I think each of us puts a load on the world.
Mm-hmm.
We eat, we consume, we burn fossil fuels, we throw garbage out. We all are putting a load on the planet, on nature, and on each other.
Yes.
So agency is our capacity to take action
Mm-hmm.
to make change.
Right. Inspired action.
Right. So
Mhm.
if you're a person that is stepped into your personal power, you're a person who's achieving their potential agency.
Right.
You know, like I built the entire Chek Institute, which was not an easy task,
Right.
but I used my agency. And myriads of people told me, you're never going to amount to anything. You have no college degree. In fact, that's why I went through bankruptcy in the United States trying to teach my system,
Right.
because people thought, how could this guy teach me anything? He doesn't even have a high school diploma. It was only when I went to Australia and New Zealand that they went, oh my God, this is the best thing since sliced bread. And if it wasn't for the New Zealanders and the Australian people, the Aussies, the Chek Institute wouldn't even be here probably, because the Americans were so full of themselves.
Right.
But the point that I'm making is that I had to use my personal power or my agency to get through these obstacles. If I didn't have enough trust and self-reliance
mm-hmm.
and trust in my own experience as a therapist and a conditioning specialist for athletes and a life coach for people, then I would have been very susceptible to believing what people were telling me.
Right. It's that trust in yourself. There's a level of self-assurance and an inner knowing about what your own potential is, because no one knows that but you.
And I think our inner potential is infinite.
Oh, absolutely.
I really
Absolutely.
do. I mean,
Yeah.
does that mean you're going to jump over a hotel, turn water into wine or whatever? No. I'm sure that those things are possible. But the point that I'm making is that the more you move into the world of matter, so if you think of the world of thought,
Mm-hmm.
it's very dynamic, it's very high vibration, but it's very ephemeral. Thoughts come and go. The average person thinks 68,000 thoughts a day.
Right.
Okay, so they're ephemeral. Then you go into the astral or emotional realm, and that's more tangible. Like a thought's very fleeting, but if you have this feeling of love or a feeling of distrust or a feeling of being lied to, we remember those things, you know.
Yes.
But you don't remember the thoughts you were thinking 10 minutes ago half the time. But then when you come to the physical world, now you have the greatest degree of tangibility, okay? And you're also dealing with more forces of form, right?
Yes, it's in the embodiment. It's the embodiment aspect of it, right? Yeah.
See, there's no gravity in the mental realm.
Oh, right.
So you can imagine yourself jumping over the hotel, but the hotel is not bound to the laws of matter, and neither is your body.
Yes.
In the emotion realm, you can imagine, well, I can feel better if I can jump out of this relationship, and that may or may not work, but that's still far more dynamic than the actual reality of the feelings in your body and the relationship you're having with that physical person. And it's a completely different level of magnitude of agency to physically jump over the hotel in your body.
Yes.
The difference is the ascended spiritual masters are capable of taking the power of unconditional love and channeling it from the mental realm into the emotional, into the physical, in laser-like congruence. So you see all sorts of things from, you know, masters that can
it's Baby Yoda.
Bends, yes, they, you know, do all sorts of things from you know, holding on to burning metal objects to, I mean, I saw a Taoist, I think, or no, he's a Tibetan master. To demonstrate his abilities, he took a shovel, put it in a fire, and left it in there. And when it was glowing white, he picked it up. And when he picked it up, it was so hot, the shovel folded backwards, and it was like almost ready to drip. And then he stuck his tongue on it for about 15 seconds, took it off, and you could hear the psss and the steam coming off of him. And he took it off, and he goes, "See, it doesn't do anything to me." And he starts laughing.
Oh my God. Yeah. But if someone believed that would hurt them, then it would
it
hurt
will
them.
instantly.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and the real example of that is you know, Tony Robbins is somebody I spent a fair bit of time with in the late 80s and early 90s. And I was a therapist for him for probably 3 years. And during that time, during that time, he let me come to any of his seminars and workshops. And one of the ones I did with him was his Firewalk. And it was extremely real. I mean, there's no faking this thing. I mean, he had, you know, it's like probably from here to my garage door across to walk across the coals.
That's a far
about,
walk.
I would imagine 30 feet, probably like 6 or 8 full steps.
Wow.
And they had lit the fire in the morning, and it was oak. And he had a thermometer in there. And before we did the Firewalk, he showed us the thermometer was at 2,600 degrees.
Jeez.
So, you know, you can't really cheat that much heat unless you do something. So he basically took us through a hypnosis process and gave us a chant to do to keep us in that state of hypnosis. And when I walked across the coals, it felt just like I was walking on warm carpet.
Wow.
But all around me, people got scared, and instantly they got burned. And the ambulance, I must have saw maybe a dozen people in the ambulance, and I could smell burning flesh all around me.
Wow.
So the instant a person could not hold the focus and the belief that they can walk across those coals, they got burnt.
Yeah.
So what I'm showing in my description here is that as we evolve our consciousness, which some would call spiritual evolution, our capacity to be congruent at the mental, emotional, and physical level and channel the energy, the high vibration energy of the mental realm or even higher realms into, which would be source itself, down into the emotional and the physical. So that, you know, a good example is a standard 60-watt light bulb has enough energy that if you put those light waves into coherence, it would make a laser that'll cut through 6 inches of solid steel.
Oh, that is a good example.
So, and that's scientific fact. Exactly the same amount of light and energy that's in a normal light bulb, if put into coherence in a single beam, will cut through 6 inches of steel.
That's an incredible example. Yeah. And and again, you know, like you said, like we have not mastered the focus.
Right.
Right.
Or the coherence.
Oh, the coherence, yes, because we are our attention is being siphoned everywhere
Yes.
right now, right?
And we're letting it happen.
Yeah,
And when I say we, I'm speaking of other people because I'm pretty good
not
at
you.
focusing. I am
Yeah.
very good at it.
Yeah.
I mean, my wives, go ask them, I'm capable of getting a lot done. And I
Yeah.
always have because it's important to me. And it's
Yeah.
important to me because I look at the world and I think if there's anything any of us should be doing right now, it's using our agency and
Yeah.
contributing.
Absolutely.
Contributing in ways that make the world sustainable, healthier, happier, and more aligned with the truth of principles of nature and not trying to outsmart nature. And that hasn't worked well.
Right. Yeah. And I think more people need to have that information or learn how to integrate it at least, because there is a crisis going on of a divergence of of us from nature because of all the technology that's coming in and replacing much of what we would get from nature.
Mhm.
Not in a good way, but
No.
but it is for younger generations. It's replacing that. Like I don't know what I would have done if I didn't have that connection with nature when I was younger. It was so, it was just such a huge influence on me. But many kids are growing up without that.
It's dangerous.
Yeah.
In fact, I'm sure you're probably aware of the diagnosis nature deficit.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
The same psychologists in New York that identified what is called body dimorphism. You're familiar with that?
No, I'm not.
Well, what they did is they took normal people and then they took anorexics and bodybuilders.
Oh, okay. Yes, I know what you mean. I think.
Yeah, they gave them a sheet of paper and asked them to draw a picture of themselves.
Right.
And they found consistently that anorexics always drew bodies far bigger to scale than they actually were. The bodybuilders always consistently drew themselves far smaller to scale, and normal people drew their bodies to normal scale. So they actually identified that anorexics and bodybuilders could not actually perceive themselves as they really were, thus the name body dimorphism.
Right.
I forgot why I was telling you that story.
We were talking about nature and how our connection to nature and technology is replacing that.
Yes. So what I was saying is I believe it's the same group of psychologists. They took kids with ADD and ADHD, and they thought that it might be due to a disconnection from nature. And they found that with one field trip a week and letting kids just play in nature, taking them out to parks and letting them walk in the forest and just run around and have fun for an hour, that I can't remember what the percentage, but it was a significant percentage of kids ADD and ADHD completely disappeared.
Wow.
With one trip to nature
That's
a week.
incredible.
Yeah.
That's an easy fix too.
It is.
Yeah.
And if I use Instagram, it's to share something that,
Yeah.
it's like, okay, here's a mandala I painted. Hopefully you're inspired to paint one too. Or
Right.
here's I am lifting stones. The gyms are closed, but there's rocks everywhere.
Right.
There's
other things we can do.
Yeah. So like I use it to try to reach people, but I don't hang around looking at Instagram going, I wonder if anybody liked my post. I might look at it once or twice in a week and say, oh, that was cool. Some people got the message.
Yeah.
That inspires me to do it again when I can.
Yeah. That's what I call sharing instead of comparing.
Yes.
You
Yes.
know?
That's a great concept.
Yeah. Because
So-
when you're sharing, you're inspiring, and you're also you're showing. And the way I do it is I really just share with people what inspires me.
Yes. What comes to my heart to share in this moment is this. I saw an interesting lecture Arnold Schwarzenegger did, which is on YouTube. And one of my friends emailed me the link, says, Paul, you really should see this. It's quite good. And in his lecture, he was talking about how he became who he is, right? How he became Mr. Universe, I think 6 times or something like that, and a movie star and governor of California, and the discipline and the focus. But one of the things he brought up is statistical research from Europe that showed that 75% of Europeans surveyed said they hated their job, and 70% of Americans said they hated their job.
Wow.
And so when we're talking about agency and not getting caught up in all the drama and the fake news and the manipulation by government agencies and medical agencies and the long list of things, what I see consistently is the people that have problems with video game addiction, porn addiction, too much screen time, easily distracted, are very largely people that do not have a clearly defined dream for themselves.
Yes.
They don't have something bigger than themselves
Right.
to grow into.
Yeah. Yeah.
So life for them is really sort of like waiting at a bus station for it all to end.
Yeah.
Well, if you're stuck in an airport or a bus station, a video game can be helpful.
Yes.
But if your life is being stuck at the bus station or the airport, and the main theme is looking what everybody else is doing and not living, then you really do have a problem.
Yeah. The need to grow, another saying that I like, the need to grow has to be greater than what you know, right? So,
yeah.
we have to, like you said, and this is what I also, another thing I talk about in my book and I teach my clients, and this is why I included it in it, is our power of imagination. And I say, build your imagination muscle.
Yeah.
Because if you can't even muster up enough to dream big or to dream at all, then you're not going to be, you can't really go anywhere from there. There is not much passion. There's not motivation or inspiration to do much else. And so, and also, how can you explore your potential if you don't explore that?
Right.
So,
Einstein said imagination is more important than thinking.
I believe that to be true.
Almost all of his great breakthroughs came from using his imagination.
Yeah.
Where he got most of his breakthroughs taking bubble baths.
Yeah. Yeah. The shower or the bath, those are the best places to.
Water is always a great place for meditative, creative exploration.
Yeah. Some of my best insights come from taking the shower, just pop into my head. And unfortunately, have to run out real quick and write it down or something. But it's when you're most relaxed, right? You're not thinking about anything.
Well, there's more to it than that, because water has probably got the widest frequency range of any molecule that's ever been studied. So when people, for example, cannot feel the negative energies of a cell phone, I say, here, grab a bottle of water and hold your bottle in your left hand, which is your feminine receptive hand, and take your cell phone and start from out here and slowly move it towards your bottle and tell me what's happening. And everybody that cannot feel the cell phone, I've never seen anyone that can't feel it when they're holding a bottle of water, because the water molecules begin to dance immediately at the frequency of the cell phone, which is in the microwave range. So that water actually feels like it's buzzing in your hand.
It's a conductor of energy.
It's a conductor of energy and consciousness.
Right.
It conducts consciousness as well.
That's why we have water in our body.
Yes, we're 70% water, 55 to 70%, depending on how well hydrated and how old you are. But the thing is that when you realize from experiences like meditating in a bathtub or doing creative imagination in a bathtub or being in a place like Hawaii where you're laying in the water near a waterfall or laying near the ocean on a beautiful day and just relaxing and taking a nap, then what happens is people have literally mystical experiences, because all of a sudden they're having deep realizations and deep openings and visualizations, and things are coming to them because water is actually channeling the consciousness of every other sentient being in the universe, because all of that is contained in the light. And the light
Yes, that's incredible.
itself, photons have been found to have almost an infinite capacity to carry information, and so is water.
Yes.
So really what you have is two massive information carriers holding hands, and you're in the middle, and you're made of both of them.
Yeah, that makes so much sense.
So
yeah.
if you want to go to the best IMAX theater in the world, just find somewhere where you can be in the sunlight and in water
Yeah.
at the same time.
Hawaii.
Or
Yeah.
California or,
Yeah.
Any place like that.
Right.
And you have the magical formula.
Now I'll think about that every time I get in the bath and realize, oh, this is why I'm having these great thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And if you use a moldavite,
yeah, I've used that before.
that'll open up
the
your
crystal. Yeah.
6th and 7th chakras.
Yeah.
In the bath water. This is a moldavite Epsom salts.
Yeah.
And if you use things like frankincense essential oil, which stimulates DMT production, and then you use Dr. Nick's third eye essential oil and put about 12 drops in there, you will have your own temple.
That sounds, and I've not tried that before, but I might do that now.
Well, I'm
Yeah.
here to support you with these
Yeah,
things.
thank you. All these mystical experiences that are like, that I'm going to have after I see you today. Yeah.
They're actually easy to have if you just
I agree.
relax.
I agree. It's so funny that you mentioned that because I did, I experienced that with my garden this past summer, just sitting and watching my garden and all the animals and the birds. And it was just it was mystical. It was like, I could start to understand the language that was going on there,
Mhm. Yes. Which brings up an interesting point, speaking of the garden. There's a great book by Annika Harris, Sam Harris's wife, and I can't remember the title. It's something like What is Consciousness? But one of the definitions she references from another author is very good. And what they're talking about is, how do you determine if something's conscious? Because human beings have this idea that they're the only ones that are conscious, right? And there's some just such ridiculously silly shit out there, even by PhDs and people with multiple master's degrees, that you'd think, my God.
They overthink it.
You haven't left the schoolyard. That's the problem. You got to go out into the world. But anyhow, I wish I could remember the guy's name, but he says this as a means of determining if something's conscious. Something's conscious if there's an experience of what it's like to be that thing.
Yes.
So
yeah, that makes sense.
if a ladybug is having an experience of ladybugness, then it's conscious.
Yes.
If it's like something to be a dog and it's different than something else, then the dog is conscious.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
The point I'm driving at is, when you're watching a garden, you're watching a bunch of things that have a sense of what it is like to be itself.
Yes.
The ladybug's not confused as to whether it's a dog, and
Right.
neither is the plant, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
they each do different things, and they
Mhm.
do different things for each other.
Yeah.
And when you actually look into what it means to be conscious, you find out that the whole of nature is conscious, even rocks.
Yes.
And people that don't think rocks are conscious just haven't spent much time with rocks.
Well, you talk to anybody who works with crystals or, any kind of rock hounding and those kinds of things, they'll tell you that, yes, they do have
Yes.
consciousness. And, as you were saying that, what came to mind is that this is what we are too. We long to just be looked at just for who we are, and instead of trying to be somebody else, right?
Yeah. Unless we don't like who we are, then we don't want to be looked at for who we are. So then we either have to fall into the trap of low self-esteem and self-judgment, or we have to don a mask and pretend to be somebody that we're not, which leads to its own set of problems.
Yeah, which is actually what we're experiencing now, literally.
Well, More than literally. Double masks.
Double, now triple even. I don't
Yeah,
even know where we're at with
I'm
it now.
3 times not who I
Yeah.
am. But,
Yes, and people are wearing goggles too. I've seen the
I
goggles
know.
and all
I mean,
that.
some of my
you know?
friends coming to see me through airports have seen people in complete hazmat
I've
suits
seen that
on
too.
airplanes. I'm like, you
Yeah.
gotta be kidding me.
It's a little overkill. Yeah. It's really interesting though, and it is to me. It's just it is a manifestation of what they're feeling inside. I think.
Yeah, oh
And-
yes,
yeah,
definitely.
no,
It's a manifestation of a belief system,
yeah, totally.
right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All you have is your story.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
that's why they say the beautiful thing about Alzheimer's is you get to meet new people every day. Because every day is
That's
a
a good
complete,
point.
you don't have a
Yeah.
story to guide your perception anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. It could be a
Right?
freeing thing in some ways
Yeah,
for people.
But the point I'm making is that how people react to any perceived or real crisis is an expression of their story. What scares one person and not another is an expression of their story.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? If you think the devil's out to get you, then everywhere you go, you're looking for the devil. And well, of course you're going to see it. That's why the sages have said for thousands of years, you bring forth that which you gaze upon.
Yes.
So you look for the devil, you find it.
Yes.
You look for God, you find it. You look for beauty, you find it. You look for love, you find it. And even in a crisis,
Yeah.
right? I've seen the crisis that we're going through right now bring the very best and the very worst out of people. And
Yes.
sometimes it's the very best and sometimes it's the very worst. But I can honestly say almost all of my personal friends are thriving.
Yeah.
Their businesses are
Yeah.
booming. And the people that are creative could reinvent themselves.
Yes.
So
right.
I've seen physical therapists and chiropractors and Czech practitioners just turn into bumps on a log, lose their businesses, lose their money, and be approaching skid road.
Right.
But right within the same circles are people that reinvented themselves,
Yeah. It's an
got
opportunity.
into something new that they kind of hoped they could do someday and
Yeah.
now figured why not, or got creative with how they coach people and got online through Skype or whatever
Yes.
and helped people through the crisis and felt really rewarded for it. So I'm like, even me with 15,000 students is enough to kind of see the difference in the behaviors.
Yeah.
And it often correlates to the level of training they've got.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. That's true.
I don't know any
Yeah.
Czech level 4s that lost it. They all
know.
got busy,
I kind of feel like the Czech people were the more, all the people that were more in line with where I was at through this whole so-called crisis.
Mhm.
That was like my kind of my tribe, during this whole
Mhm.
time.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was real interesting. And because, there's a sense of personal values that, you stick with when you know about health and, and when it comes to this subject, we know that better than anybody else, especially. And that's why we teach people these things.
Yes.
Um,
Well, the thing is what I teach is not what to do or what to think. I teach a
Right.
system of how to think.
yes.
Look at the importance of what you cannot do without. You can change beliefs in and out, but you can't change sleep in and out. In other words, you can't take exercise out and say, well, I think I'm just going to stop doing that.
Right.
You can take a certain meditation practice out and your quality of life could change. But if you take healthy food out and put junk food in, or you take sleep out and put television in, or you take exercise out and say, I'm too busy, or you take happiness out and make someone else be responsible for that, you're screwed.
yes.
So the point I'm making is my system isn't designed to say to Czech professionals, you've got to prescribe this drug, you've got to do this. Here's a system of evaluating people so you know what's important.
Mm-hmm.
And here's a system of values that, if adhered to, give you the greatest chance of having a sustainable life, cultivating life force energy, and having enough agency to create the dream that you want to live instead of being constantly sick or broken or poor me.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the thing that I get a lot of joy out of is seeing that I actually spent my life teaching people how to think properly and how to
critically
solve
think.
problems
Yeah.
intelligently versus having a recipe.
Yeah, critical thinking is not a thing much anymore, it seems like.
No,
Yeah.
I think thinking is pretty much gone.
I think so. Yeah.
You know, and when you and I'll elaborate on that. When you look at research on what happens when you're looking at a screen, you go into a hypnotic state.
Yes.
Research shows that you actually drop below basal metabolic rate while watching a television. Yet you're being programmed to be hungry. So people are eating chips and all sorts of crap because they don't realize that they're actually being tricked by the subliminal information to eat and to consume and to consume. When people are spending a lot of time on screens, they're actually not conscious, but they don't realize that they're being programmed to think, act, and behave in ways that they're then not conscious that they're doing, which creates herd mentality. You get that?
Yeah. It's a television program, remember?
It's a television program. It's making you believe.
Yes.
I say, tell your own vision and be the source of your own beliefs.
Yes.
And make sure that what you have made be live is something that you really want to live, or you're going to be a statistic.
Yes.
And
you're not going to own it. And you're not going to own your life. You're going to be, the TV, the phone, Instagram, Facebook, whatever, Twitter is going to dictate what you do in your day instead of focusing on what you really want in your life.
And the result of living that way is you need people like Donald Trump to give you a handout.
Yes.
While forgetting that there's no handouts. That just means your taxes are going to go up.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
That it has to come from somewhere, right? Yeah. It's people, and then you'll never reap the benefits of being able to see your own potential and explore that, right?
Yeah. And so, there's nothing I think worse than dying knowing that you haven't lived yet.
Yeah, that is the worst thing, I think, too.
Or, as Joseph Campbell says, spending your whole life climbing a ladder only to get to the top and realize it's leaning against the wrong wall, meaning you did what everybody else told you to do to be successful or to make your parents happy, but you spent your whole life climbing the wrong ladder or the right ladder on the wrong wall, however you want to look at it.
Right.
And that's really why the Chek system, as you know, is developed based on number one. What is your dream?
Yes.
And what is your client's dream? Where are you out of balance relative to living that dream physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually? What choices are you willing to make to get in balance? And what values need to be put in place so that you know when to say yes and when to say no and don't become a gullible person who believes everything they see on television, or worse yet, is being programmed like a robot without even knowing it and then acting in ways that lead to pain, disease, dysfunction, depression, anxiety, and suicide, all of which are profitable except the suicide. Like suicide means you've lost your business.
Yeah, pretty much.
You've lost your business.
And it's called living in integrity.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yes.
Which we have lost sight of how to do that, I think, in many ways. But
well, give me a short wrap on your walking the path of the labyrinth.
Oh, yeah.
Since we have a labyrinth right here.
Yeah, I know, right? So the walking the path of the labyrinth chapter is all about my teaching style and what I have learned to teach my clients. They would be like, "Oh, I can't believe I can't do this. Like, why can't I do this?" I'm like, "You haven't practiced it. You never learned it before. What do you mean you can't do this?" Or they'd get frustrated because they felt like, "Well, I'm doing this again, and I was already supposed to learn how to do this." And I'm like, found myself thinking, well, why do they think they're supposed to know how to do this if they, first of all, haven't been integrating it or practicing it or even learning it in the first place?
Yeah.
So I realized that, okay, we're taught to learn in a linear fashion in our society.
Yes.
And I was like, okay, this is why people think like this. They don't quite understand that there is what I call walking the path of the labyrinth. Like it's a circular instead of more linear process. So you circle down, you're letting go of what doesn't serve you. You're learning new things. You're going to the center where you're taking it all in and then integrating it and returning and kind of also possibly teaching it at that point. So there's that cycle that you go through many times with different skills. Maybe you're going to do that skill. That skill is going to be, you're going to walk the path of the labyrinth with that skill more than once.
Yeah.
Even more, maybe more than twice,
Oh my God, yes.
maybe even more than that. So it's, and I know that each time I learned something new, sometimes it's just one circle of truth about that thing, right? So that also, spills into physical activity. And so I put my clients through, I have them repeat things quite often. Number one, to check in with their bodies and to start to learn more about their bodies because they're in it. They need to know what certain things feel like and what things feel like when they're off or when they're out of balance or when they're in balance,
Like, how does your body feel when you try to walk a balance beam and you've been eating junk food?
Yeah, exactly. Not very good.
No.
Not in balance at all. Like you'll probably fall off the beam most likely.
I used to show my athletes all the time with what I call the Danny Way test, which is before I train you, like I'm dealing with elite athletes, like X Games competitors, I say, I've got a simple task for you. And they learn quickly what it is. Just kneel on that Swiss ball without falling off for 1 minute.
Yeah.
And you know what? The days that they're ready for intense, complex training, it's like the ball's bolted to the floor. But the same athlete, after drinking, drugging, and partying, comes back on a Monday, and they'll fall off that ball 5 times in 1 minute, and they'll be like getting pissed off and wanting to kick the ball. I'm like, I got news for you. It ain't the ball.
Your equilibrium.
Let me hear about what you've been eating, drinking, and when did you go to bed? And every time it's like, oh my God, that ball tells everything. I'm like, because that ball is responding to you without you on it. It doesn't do a damn thing. It just sits there happy as a clam.
The ball, it's not the ball.
No,
So it is like that exactly. So they're learning more they're taking more ownership and responsibility about how they feel instead of me telling them, okay, how they feel or what they're supposed to feel or whatever. They're owning it because they're checking in with it every day. And with gymnastics, we would do the same warm up every day. We do the same sequence, the same foundational stretching and warming, dynamic warm up and all of those things to activate the body and to be the same thing. We wouldn't get tired of it. We wouldn't get bored of it. It just was what we did. So I teach my clients how to do these things. These are foundational, like check-in movements that you need all the time. And again, and then you can compare. You can have some comparison there instead of just doing, one thing one day and another thing the next day. Not that we don't change it up, but it's more about, okay, you're learning a skill. Let's take some time and space with this, and then maybe we'll go, we'll take a break from it. We'll go back to it later and you might realize something different about it.
Oh, yes. Yeah. One of the things that cracks me up is like, I'll give students an HLC training. I'll say, would you like to commit to a gong?
Yeah.
And many of them that don't finish the gong, which is unfortunately too many of them, one of the most common things I hear them say is, well, nothing was happening. It's boring. or they say, well, I did it for 100 days. I don't need it anymore. And I say, I'll tell you what, I've been learning from that exercise for 18 years.
Right.
The difference is I'm doing it.
Yes.
Right. So
right.
It's the point I'm making is that life is like an onion. And as we grow, we peel through the layers and eventually we get to the essence of things.
Exactly.
But most people just want to go to a slot machine or a Amazon and have instant gratification and expect, oh, I've done this Tai Chi exercise for 3 months now and I'm not enlightened yet, so I'm going to go
Right.
try something else. It's like,
Yeah. It's
you
not the
know,
move. It's not the move. Yeah.
it's like if you want to grow, you have to put the effort in to grow.
Yeah. You have to put your attention, your interest,
And your trust.
and your trust into that, and make it a ritual, because if it's not ritualized, if you're not doing it consistently, you'll never see the potential there, and so if someone wants to learn the nuance of fitness, or if they want to learn those deeper aspects of that, and then they work with me, because that's what I teach them.
That's what
that's
what
yeah
therapists and coaches and mentors are for. I mean, the first thing that when you go on the hero's journey, first there's an ordeal, then there's the departure, but
Right.
then you have to meet the mentor,
Yes.
because it's very unlikely someone can make the hero's journey without a mentor.
Yeah.
It would be like sending a kid off into the woods to try to survive alone without a mentor, right? And what Joseph Campbell says about the hero's journey is, the hero's journey does not mean going to the forest and finding a path somebody else made and walking it.
Right.
That's not the hero's journey.
Yeah.
The hero's journey is going into the forest and cutting your own trail through the woods. And that means you have to face the bears, the cougars, the tigers, and the whatever else is in there. You can't just do what everybody else is doing, or you're not a hero. You're something else.
Exactly.
You're an average person. And as Jung said, the average man can never be successful.
Right.
Because by definition, average and successful are different ends of the spectrum.
Right. That makes sense. Yeah. And so you're forging your own path.
Yes. And that takes it takes a willingness to face your fears. It takes a willingness to work through challenges, but it also, as I said, requires a mentor that knows how to survive in the jungle of the world and can not tell you who you should be or what you should be doing, but give you the skills to figure that out for yourself.
Yes.
And otherwise, you just become addicted to your teacher or your mentor, and now you can't live without them. So now you've just got another, what was a good word for it? You've got another addiction, right?
Right. It's okay to have inspiration, get inspiration from people, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's another thing to be codependent.
Yes, that's the right word, codependent.
Yeah.
You don't feel safe in the world without your mentor holding your hand. Now, I'm not speaking against mentors holding your hand in uncharted territories and in areas where you need skilled help to know how to process the situation and make a good decision. I'm talking about needing the mentor to trust yourself, feel good about yourself, and you feel insecure without them at your fingertips on the phone or standing next to you. Then now you're really just living the life of a child. You're just, what Jung would call the per-eternus, or the eternal child archetype.
Yeah, because you're not really using the teachings. You're not making them your own or integrating them, really. If that's going on years later, if I can understand if that's happening more in the beginning of the relationship, but as you go on and learn from the mentor, I think that yes, you need to make it your own.
And a real mentor does not want you addicted to
Right.
them. They want you to. A real mentor is like a mother eagle. When her pup gets to a certain size, she's got to kick it out of the nest and it has to fly. And if it doesn't, it dies. And she knows it won't survive anyway.
Yes.
So that's just the reality of being an eagle or a bird. And so a real mentor will kick you out of the nest and say, fly or die.
Eventually you have to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground.
We sure did.
Yeah, good job.
That was
great,
super fun.
Yeah, great conversation. Hope you guys all enjoyed it. Thank you, all of you that are listening from my podcast, Living 4D with Paul Chek. Yes. Thank you for anything you buy from the sponsors. They're beautiful people, have great values that are totally in line with sustainability and keeping us all healthy. And thank you for those purchases, because it gives me a little support to be able to spend the time and the energy and the resources to make this podcast available to you. And thank you, Allison, for sharing me and letting me hang out with you on your podcast.
Oh, and thank you, Paul, for inviting me to your beautiful, beautiful oasis out here.
Thank you. Yeah. It's proof
And
of
doing
my
the podcasting.
manifestation abilities.
Yes.
And the girls. The girls are.
Yes.
It wasn't just me. Believe me. This is a 3 adult project here.
Yeah. Well, it's beautiful. So congratulations on
Thank
this.
you.
Yeah.
Lots of love and blessings to all of you. And hopefully you'll feel inspired by what we shared today and know that crisis is a time of great opportunity. Irvin Laszlo said in my podcast with him, who's a world recognized twice Nobel laureate systems engineer, systems theorist and engineer, that when a system's in chaos, it's the easiest to change.
Yeah.
It's already unstable, right?
Yeah. So you can make those changes.
Instead of sitting around watching television, eating bags of chips and drinking soda pop and getting a COVID belly, now's a really good time to say, wow, I've got time to really create something and get clear on what it is and ask the universe for help. And as Walter Russell says, the universe operates on a 1-to-1 principle. For every step you move toward your dream, it moves 1 step toward you. So trust in the universe. It made you for a reason. We're all a piece of the cosmic puzzle and we all need each other. And so let's hold hands and circle the globe.
Let's do it.
All right. Lots of love. Bye, everybody.
Thanks, Paul. Bye.
Thank you for listening to Living 4D with Paul Chek and today's guest, Allison Pelot. You can follow Allison on Instagram at Pure Energy PDX, on Facebook at Pure Energy Wellness, or on her YouTube channel, Pure Energy Wellness. Subscribe to her podcast, Integrate Yourself with Allison, through Apple Podcasts and Blueberry. For more about her online programs and how she works with clients, go to www.pureenergypdx.com. Follow Paul on Instagram at paul.chek, on Twitter at Paul Chek, or on his YouTube podcast channel, youtube.com/living4D with Paul Chek. Watch more on Paul's blog at paulcheksblog.com and get your free subscription to Chek videos and more at the Chek Institute's new media site, chekiva.com.